o'er his son's sleep to brood. There we have the father bending over the face of the sleeping son. And then in the second image, as in a good film, we have the same images reversed. We see the son bending over the face of that dead man, his father. And perhaps our recent study of psychology has made us more sensitive to those verses, or thought, as his own mother kissed his eyes, of what her kiss was when his father wooed. There is, of course, the beauty of the soft English vowels, brood, wood, and the additional beauty of wooed being by itself, not wooed her, but simply wooed by itself. The word goes on ringing. Here we have one example. And there is also a different kind of beauty. Let us take an adjective that once was commonplace. I have no Greek, but I think that the Greek is oinopa pontos, and the common English rendering is the wine dark sea. I suppose the word dark is slipped in to make things easier for the reader. Perhaps it would be the winey sea or something of the kind. But I am sure that when Homer, or when the many Greeks we call Homer, wrote it, they were simply thinking of the sea. I mean, the adjective was straightforward. But nowadays, after trying many fancy adjectives, if I, or if any of you, write in a poem, the wine dark sea, this is not a mere repetition of what the Greeks wrote. It is rather a going back to tradition. It means rather that when we speak of the wine dark sea, we are thinking of Homer and of the many centuries, perhaps the 30 centuries between us and Homer. So that though the words may be much the same, when we write the wine dark sea, we're really writing something quite different from what Homer was writing. So that thus the language is shifting. The Latins knew all about that. And the reader is shifting also. And this brings us back to the old metaphor of the Greek. The metaphor, or rather the truth, about no man going down twice to the same river. And there is, I think, an element of fear here, because at first we are apt to think of the river as flowing. We think, well, of course, the river goes on, but the water is changing. And then, with a beginning sense of awe, we feel that we also are changing, that we are as shifting and as evanescent as the river is. But we need not worry too much about the fate of the classics, because beauty is always with us. And here I would like to quote another verse, perhaps by a now forgotten poet, Browning. He says, "Just when we're safest, there's a sunset touch, a chorus ending from Euripides, somebody's death." But the first verse is enough. Just when we're safest. That is to say, beauty is lurking all about us. It may come to us in the name of a film. It may come to us in some popular lyric. We may even find it in the pages of a great and famous writer. And since I have spoken of a dead master of mine, Rafael Cansinos Asens, maybe this is the second time you hear his name. I don't quite know why he's forgotten. I remember that Cansinos Asens wrote a very fine prose poem wherein he asked God to defend him, to save him from beauty, because he says there is too much beauty in the world. And he thought that beauty was overwhelming it. And though I do not know if I've been a particularly happy man, but I hope I'm going to be happy at the right age, at the ripe age of 67, I still think that beauty is all around us. And as to the fact of a poem being written by a great poet or not, this is only important to historians of literature. Let us suppose, for the sake of argument, that I have written a beautiful line. Let us take this as a working hypothesis. Once I have written it, that line does me no good, because, as I already said, that line came to me from the Holy Ghost, from the subliminal self, or perhaps, as I often find out, I'm merely quoting something I read some time ago, and then it's a rediscovering. So that perhaps it is better that a poet should be nameless. I spoke about the wine dark sea, and now, as my hobby is Old English, and I'm afraid if you have the courage or the patience to come back to some of my lectures, you may have more Old English inflicted on you. I would like to recall some lines that I think beautiful. I would say them firstly in English, and then in the stark and voweled Old English of the 9th century. It snowed from the north, rime bound the fields, hail fell on earth, the coldest of seeds. Norðan snjúde, hrimur hrusan bond, hail feolone orthan, corna kaldast. Now, going back to what I said about Homer, when the poet wrote that, he was merely recording things that had happened. This was, of course, very strange in the 9th century, when people thought in terms of mythology, of allegorical images, and so on. He was merely telling very commonplace things. But nowadays, when we read, it snowed from the north, rime bound the fields, hail fell on earth, the coldest of seeds, there is an added poetry. There is the